Leonardo DiCaprio.
Miss Anne Hathaway.
Meryl Streep, the Iron Lady.
Alan Arkin in Little Miss Sunshine.
Kevin Costner.
Yes.
The King's Speech.
Birdman.
I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Redoing the Oscars. And this week we're going to be talking about the 2013 Oscars Best Actor category. And I'm going to be talking about why I think Leonardo DiCaprio should have won over Matthew McConaughey, and ultimately try to figure out if the Academy did the right thing in hindsight. Do I have the right pick here? And then maybe an alternative unnominated pick that is also equally as deserving. But that's what we've been doing now for the past couple of weeks, redoing the Oscars, taking a bird's eye view on things and trying to figure out who are the actual, maybe deserving winners 10 plus years out from it. We started with 2015, now 2014, now 2013. We've covered Best Picture and Best Actor. I'm going back to the Best Actor because I think this is an important kind of recorrection, even though as much as I do like Matthew McConaughey, this is ultimately a series to talk about how great certain movies are, and in so many years there are movies that don't win in these categories, and I want to re-talk about those movies and reappreciate those movies and talk about the movies that ultimately didn't win, that got nominated, that were close, or maybe didn't even get nominated at all, that are some of the best performances or directing or movies of the decade. So we're not going to just focus on Best Actor and Best Picture. We're going to talk about Best Director and the other acting categories as well. Each week kind of changing it up to where I think maybe the greatest injustice is. But I'd always love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. First off, what's your pick in terms of maybe who you would go with this year? Or who's your unnominated pick? Who's your favorite performance of this year that maybe didn't get nominated that you want to shine a little bit of love onto and share with the community here? And then also, if you want to have certain thoughts in terms of what I should talk about in future years, like you've always hated the 2007 Supporting Actress category and thought it should have gone to someone else, I'd love to hear that in the comments down below as well. But without further ado, let's get into things. The structure of these videos is we give a little bit of context. I give my alternative nominated pick that didn't win, my alternative unnominated pick that wasn't even nominated at the Oscars, and then ultimately try to figure out, did the Academy make it right? Did they choose the right thing? What if we kind of redid things? How would things look? And do a little bit of theorizing in that sense. But starting off at the top here, some Oscars context. This is the 12 Years a Slave Oscars, but it isn't really. You know, oftentimes when I think about a year of an Oscar, I go with the Best Picture winner. But with 12 Years a Slave, at the time, and even still I think its modern reputation, is difficult to talk about. It's such a serious and intense and brutal film that it's difficult to rewatch. I don't think a lot of people do that. It's not easy to talk about in generally. So I think because it's so intense and serious and touchy, people just don't want to talk about it and want to celebrate it. And so that's why even at the time, I think when people think about this Oscars, they think about two things. I think they think about Ellen DeGeneres, her first time hosting, and the iconic selfie that she did that still goes across the internet that I think some people don't even realize was at the Oscars, but was, I think at the time, was the most liked tweet on Twitter, which was an important thing back then. And then the other thing that people think about for the Oscars, this Oscars in particular, is it's the Matthew McConaughey Oscars. We were in the middle of the McConaissance, this time period where Matthew McConaughey, who was once a promising young actor who kind of got into a bunch of trashy romantic comedies, is finally coming back and doing some more serious roles. And 2011, he has Lincoln Lawyer. 2012, he has Mud. And then this year, 2013, Dallas Buyers Club and Wolf of Wall Street. And it's like, he's back. This great actor who we've loved is in serious roles again and giving great performances. And we want to celebrate that. And we want to kind of, culminate in this kind of great comeback of an actor. And the Academy loves that. The Academy loves narratives. They love comebacks. I mean, even if they don't win, they still happen in the modern day era, whether you think of Brendan Fraser for The Whale, or you think of Demi Moore for The Substance. They're very much the similar kind of a path. You have an actor who was in a lot of maybe mainstream blockbusters and actors that maybe a lot of people always liked, but that didn't really have Oscar-worthy or Oscar-type performances. And then they get a kind of a later-in-life dramatic role that they knock out of the park, and then the Academy goes, oh, we've been waiting for this for such a long time. We've loved you in the big blockbusters. Now you're finally doing our kind of a movie, so we're going to recognize you. And it's somewhat of a complicated relationship with a lot of those performers because on one hand, I go, I'm glad Matthew McConaughey, an actor who I really like, has an Oscar. But it's always for the weird performance. It's always for the one that they had to do a lot for. Even someone like a Brendan Fraser. Are people going to think of The Whale and him? Or are they going to think of, The Mummy? In the same way Matthew McConaughey. Are they going to think of Dallas Buyers Club, or are they going to think of Interstellar even, I think in hindsight it is obvious, more and more obvious, what the kind of roles they maybe should have won for, their most iconic roles. And what's always interesting about these types of comeback Oscars is that the actors don't always make the best choices post-Oscars. You see an actor like McConaughey who has this reconnaissance, right? But it was somewhat short-lived because after Interstellar, he does Free State of Jones and Gold and Dark Tower. And it's like, what happened? Where are all these great movies that he was in? Where's all these great performances? And I think he's still well-liked, but he hasn't reached the heights of that time period. Now, looking back 10 years, did we make the right choice? Would we give it to somebody else? Well, looking back on it, my alternative nominated pick here would be Leonardo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street. I took away Leo's Oscar back in 2015, and I'm giving it back to him here. I think that whether you are a big fan of Shutter Island or Departed or any Catch Me If You Can, you could have given him an Oscar many times before. But I think that this was maybe his most iconic role. Up there was something like a Titanic, or maybe something like a One Bell After Another, and is the peak of kind of handsome movie star Leonardo DiCaprio. And he's not just a movie star, he's a great actor as well. But in terms of the peak of his powers and what he's able to bring on screen and the dominance of this performance, it's a performance I absolutely love. And even at the time, I recognized how impactful it was. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many people I knew who saw the movie in high school and then decided to go into business or finance because of that. I mean, it had an incredibly outsized influence on the business community in this time period. And I think a large part of that is due to the totally committed and balls to the wall type of performance that DiCaprio brings here. And, I think this is a movie similar to something like a Fight Club, or maybe even something like a Marty Supreme, where sometimes people don't like the movie because they don't like the fans of the movie. And what I think is interesting about all those movies, though, is that the reason why they connect with so many different types of people, this is a movie that are Scorsese fans, they love it. Sophisticated film critics, they love it as a commentary on American greed. But then also aspirational business people really love it too, because it looks like a really fun time. And what's beautiful about the movie is I really think the central performance is that it can appeal to everybody. And whether you just take it on surface value and you go, this would be fun to be young and hot and rich and have all this money, have all these crazy parties, or you see it as a seething critique on American capitalism, I think both of them work. I think the performance plays to both sides of it. I think DiCaprio kind of understands the appeal of this character, that this world is fun and is exciting. And I think what's underrated about this performance, people always think about the crazy party scenes and the yelling and the over the top and the ridiculousness, but there really is an arc to his performance. He doesn't start off like that. And that's what I think makes the movie so powerful and what makes him such an interesting, tragic figure. Leo understands that this is a regular guy who has a great talent for sales. The tragedy is kind of where he decides to push his efforts and the conning and the stealing of money, essentially, of a certain part of a certain type of a person. And he kind of gets rich on the back of that. But Leo understands that arc, because when you think of how he plays a scene, like his first meeting with Jonah Hill at the diner, he is kind of meek and somewhat shy and non-confrontational. He doesn't want to have this conversation. He's just kind of, matter of fact, this is what I make, this is what I'm doing. And then you cut that to the Quaalude scene, and it's this incredible physical comedy performance, and you look, oh my God, look how desperate and depraved he's become for, just any kind of substance that makes him feel anything. You realize that that's a huge jump. And like I said, I think a lot of people think of the party scenes, but not a lot of people realize that he does show an arc here, and there is complexity and layers and a change in this performance. So he's not only good at that kind of regular, everyday guy performance, he's also really good at convincing us that this guy's got a genuine talent for sales and selling people, and then also convincing us that he can be this cool charm, business guy. Got incredible comedic timing with a lot of his peers. You have so much of the physical moments, whether it be the dancing or that kind of a Quaaludes physical comedy scene. It is just an instantly iconic performance because it got everything that DiCaprio is great at. Some of that kind of shyness, that meekness, that ability to understand and really connect with his characters and make them feel like real people. He's also in incredible suits the entire time. He looks great. It's kind of the height, aside from maybe something like Titanic, of like good-looking Leo, and that power that he has there. He doesn't shy away from that like he does in The Revenant or One Bell After Another. And then some of that physical comedic timing that he's also able to bring. It is this kind of overall intense, funny, dramatic, honest performance. It's just a perfect DiCaprio movie star role that I also think is a genuinely interesting, tragic figure that DiCaprio always takes seriously. He understands the absurdity of the scenario, but I don't think he's forgetting to ground the character in some of the quieter moments of even him with Jonah Hill at the boat near the end. As far as crazy and over the top as he can be, he can still kind of hone you in like a tractor beam in terms of his ability to connect with just another person in a small, intimate moment and make it feel honest and earnest and real. It really is an incredible magic trick that he's able to pull off here. And why not DiCaprio at this time? I mean, we talked about the McConaughey and how he was great. DiCaprio had 2010 Shutter Island, huge hit. 2010 Inception, even bigger hit. And crazy how big that movie was. It probably would win Best Picture if it was released, this year. And then you have 2012 Django, a great supporting role. And then 2013 this, and it was a huge hit as well. So it's like he was having his moment too. So it's weird that, and the Oscars understood that. They a couple of years later gave him the Oscar. They realized that he's been giving these great performances and he hasn't been recognized. So why not this movie? In particular, when you think about it in the grand context of things, you go, well, McConaughey has Interstellar next year. Just give it to him for Interstellar next year. But in 2013, you didn't know Interstellar was going to be as great as it was. So kind of a difficult balance there. Although in hindsight, looking back on things, I do think my unnominated pick would be for DiCaprio. But maybe my favorite performance of the year would be my alternative unnominated pick, which is Oscar Isaac in Inside Llewyn Davis. Kind of a crime that this wasn't a bigger Oscars movie. When you think about the Coen brothers, 3 out of their last 4 movies before this were Best Picture nominees. So why wasn't this movie also in contention? Or at the very least, why wasn't Oscar Isaac in contention? And what I love about the movie and the performance in particular is that it is a performance that I genuinely can't see anyone else do. Usually with a lot of the movies, I could go, yeah, I guess I could see someone else do that, right? Like if you told me Christian Bale was in The Wolf of Wall Street, I'd go, a little bit weird or odd, but yeah, I guess I could see it. But, anyone else in this role, I don't think so. And it's a star-making role for Oscar Isaac, who had been around in a couple of other smaller performances and movies, but never totally broke out. And then this comes along and he's absolutely dynamite and I think perfectly understands the character. Similarly to Jordan Belfort and The Wolf of Wall Street, he is kind of a lovable jerk, but in a different way, where Belfort's so charismatic and charming. In Llewyn Davis, it isn't that, but you still kind of want him to succeed. That's the kind of magic trick of the movie, the magic trick of the performance. And I think Isaac is able to kind of show both sides of it. It's not unknown to me as to why I root for his character. I root for his character because I actually believe he is a good person deep down who is totally overcome with sadness, grief, and a cynical self-sabotaging way of approaching the world that he is screwing himself in every instance. And you just kind of want to hope and realize that he sees the good within himself. Part of that is just the simple fact that he saves a cat at the beginning, so you understand that maybe he's got this, good nature to him already. The fact that when you see him sing, he's got this beautiful soul and he really does come alive. It's an incredible, remarkable act where you see this guy who's miserable and grumpy and tired and cold. And then when he gets into the bar and he sings, he comes alive. And then as soon as he's done singing, he goes back to the kind of depressed, miserable self. And so much of that is to just the way Oscar is able to light up his eyes when he's singing. And then when he's not, he's got this kind of blank, grinning face to himself. And I think his approach to the character is, in the simplest sense, okay, when he's singing, he's alive. He's feeling, he's closing his eyes, he's moving his shoulders, he feels lighter. And then when he's not, He's rolling his shoulders, he's slouching, he's moving like he's so rigid. I think the way he walks in this movie is so fascinating because it makes you feel kind of cold and tired. The fact that he's so exhausted throughout the movie, I think, adds so much to the character, mumbling throughout his words, not being able to get his thoughts outside of the singing element. And it's all these small little choices, the way Oscar carries himself, the way he pronounces words. It's these choices that add to the character of Llewyn Davis, and I think adds to the larger themes of the movie of it's easy maybe to be nice and happy when you have money, but it's a lot harder when you're not, and you're sleeping on couch to couch and you don't feel like your life is going the way you're supposed to, and you're getting screwed over and you've got a lot of debt, and I just have to worry about one thing to the next. And he's such a tragic figure because you want him to make good choices and he continually doesn't at every moment, and you understand why he doesn't do it, and yet he's just got this bitter, cynical view of the world and doesn't want to accept help from everyone else, even though he kind of does need it. And he's just this very fascinating, interesting character. And what I think Isaac's able to bring to the movie is those kind of actorial, we'll call them, tics or choices that come to life. You really do understand, I think, the soul and beauty that this man has when he's singing. But when he's not, you see the rigidity, you see the cynical, you see the sadness, the tiredness. It's just all portrayed so much through his body language, and even some of the blank stares of his face. You understand that this is a kind of a sad, depressed man with maybe a heart of gold that you want to kind of see a little bit more out of, but you never do. And that's the kind of tragedy and the humor of the film as well. It's a great film. My favorite of the year. One of my favorites really of the decade, I'd say. I think maybe one of the Coen brothers' best movies. I think not a lot of people maybe have recognized that, and it's a big statement to say because it's not Big Lebowski or Fargo, but it really is a special, beautiful film. And if you haven't seen it in a while, definitely do check it out. It's the right time of year to watch the movie, cold and bitter, but it is just an absolutely beautifully looking movie as well, with a dynamite performance from Oscar Isaac. But did the Academy get it right? Not necessarily. It's a little bit more of a complicated one because I genuinely do. I like Dallas Buyers Club, and I think McConaughey in the movie is actually great, and I admire the physical transformation that he undergoes for sure. But it's a classic Oscars performance. Let's give the comeback role to the guy who's just come back recently, and he lost all this weight and he transforms himself into this serious drama. But let's not give it to the iconic role that is iconic even at the time of DiCaprio and Wolf of Wall Street. And it is one of those classic examples of it's easy to redo the Oscars, very easy, because you can look things in hindsight. And in hindsight, the obvious choice, I think, is DiCaprio in 2013. Then in 2014, you give it to McConaughey for Interstellar. Then in 2015, you can give it to Matt Damon for The Martian. And it's like this perfect, at least for me in my generation, I go like, that's a great way to fix the Oscars and redo the Oscars. But of course, they didn't have that at the time. They didn't know Interstellar would be as great as it was. They didn't know that Matt Damon probably wouldn't have a movie star performance like The Martian, or it would be as iconic as it would. They're just trying to do things at the time they can't see years down the road. But that's what I think makes this series so fun, is that we can talk about it and redo things and talk about whether they kind of got it right or wrong, and fix little scenarios with the Oscars. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. This is the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed. I'd love to know if you think DiCaprio should have won for this movie. If there's any other performances you think he should have won for. I mentioned in my Connors episode my favorite movies from 2025. I loved One Battle After Another and thought DiCaprio was absolutely fantastic in that movie. So maybe he should have got a second Oscar for that. Who's to say? But having a lot of fun with these episodes and videos, so I hope you are too. But that's about it. Until next time. Stay tuned.